Over 2 million people have been affected, have been affected by issues around payment at the Dartford Crossing tunnel, a BBC investigation has found. The issues have been linked to a change in operator last year. Now, many of those who have contacted the BBC after receiving a penalty did have a prepaid account, but found a payment for their journeys had not been made. National Highway said that more than 94% of journeys using the Dartford Tunnel are paid for correctly and on time. So what should you do if you are affected by something like this? I'm joined by Nick Freeman, lawyer, commentator and road safety campaigner. You've also got another nickname as well. Are you not going by Mr. Loophole anymore, Nick?
Well, it's you guys who go by Mr. Loophole. So I embraced it and trademarked it.
Absolutely, because you're a clever
about
guy.
25 years ago.
Yeah, because you're a very clever guy. You know, I want to be like you when I grow up, Nick. But
there's a song about that, isn't it? Jungle Book. I want to be like you.
Absolutely. Now, break this down for us then. What is your? And this is all because I'm trying to warn my listener about the fact that you're going to have to pay for other tunnels in a minute. Break it down for us.
So what's happened is in July, 28th of July last year, there was, as you said, a change of ownership. And the new company assumed responsibility for vehicle identification and the whole payment process and account management. And that has been fraught with difficulties, technological difficulties, and also administrative difficulties, because when a new company takes over, they have to validate the payment system. So the old company had everyone's accounts there. There were, in fact, 1.7 million account holders, but only 770,000 have actually validated their accounts. So what happened was people didn't receive the account holders didn't receive the email. They went to junk. Maybe they were the wrong email address. So a massive number of people, or maybe they've just ignored it, thinking, I've got money in my account. I don't need to do anything. Why are they contacting me? So what's happened is there've been many trips. Bearing in mind there is no time limit in which these PCNs can be issued, and they've then received fines. Some of them have received, hundreds of fines, particularly fleet drivers, without realising that actually they've not complied with what they need to comply with. So the drivers need to ensure that their account details have been validated, and many have failed to do that. About 1 million have in fact failed to do that.
So it's a pretty big deal.
They've made the wrong assumption. They've just assumed, I don't need to do anything. I've got an account and that's that. When a new provider takes over, the new provider can't take money for anyone's account unless you get express permission and the customer validates the account. And that hasn't happened, as I say, in about 1 million cases. So that explains a lot of the problem. I mean, to put it into perspective, in 3 months prior to July, there was something like 190,000 on average per month of these penalty tickets being issued. After July, the average month was 277,000. So the increase has been about 50%. But what is heartening for your listeners is that nearly a third of these have been successfully appealed, because obviously the new providers had difficulties, which to some extent has been of its own making and not the driver's making. So if you have a genuine case where you had an account and you didn't realize this, you didn't receive an email, what you have to do is contact them and explain your circumstances. You have to do so within 28 days. You make what's called a representation order. You can do it online. And as I say, in almost 1 in every 3 cases, that's been successful. If for some reason that's rejected, you then go to a tribunal, an adjudicator, traffic adjudicator, and he or she will hear your case. What you can't do, and this is what's happened in many, many cases, is people have just assumed, I've got an account, so it's their mistake, not mine, and they bury their head, and then the situation's run away with itself. And it's exacerbated because, as I say, many of these notices come months later and they've accumulated massively. And what's strange is, if you got summons with a speeding offence, you have to be notified within 14 days. Most road traffic offences, you have to be notified within 14 days for the obvious, very good reasons. But with these tickets, there's no time limit upon which you're required to be notified. So, there was one fleet driver, I think, had thousands and thousands of tickets issued. He had 2,500 vehicles. So you can imagine the mayhem that causes. So, the fault lies with the driver, and it lies with the new provider. I am happy to report that things now are more or less running back to normal levels, and the system seems to be now properly well integrated. The technology problems have been overcome, and people have validated their accounts. So things seem to be more or less back on an even keel.
Yeah, I mean, this is GDPR, isn't it? So you can't just take somebody's details and give it over to somebody else.
And there's good reason for it, isn't there? There's good reason. You just, so that's the law. They can't, even if they wanted to, they can't take that payment from an account that relates to another provider. They're not allowed to do that.
So if there's anybody listening now who still hasn't got it sorted, because if you're like me, you bury your head in the sand, you think, oh, it's their mistake, they'll sort it out, and it means that I'm having to do a lot of work now and pay, half the amount in fines to people like you. What advice would you give?
Well, I'm afraid if you've buried your head in the sand, it's your head, and it's hidden from a problem, and that's not really the best way of dealing with things. My advice is
clearly not.
Never bury your head in the sand. Ultimately, you're using something which you have to pay for, and it's your responsibility to make sure that you pay for it. When there is a technological problem, such as, wrong number plates have been identified, or when there's a problem with, you get the ticket and you act on it, say, look, I'm sorry, I thought I had an account, and it's genuine, and you deal with it promptly, that's fine. But if you just do nothing for months on end, you're probably too late. And obviously you have to appeal it within 28 days. You're encouraged to pay the fine. The fine drops to half. I think it's from £70 to £35 if you pay it within 14 days. If you've left it this long, I think you've got a problem. To be honest with you, you just can't bury your head.
When I started here 22 years ago, if I wanted the phone to ring, for a couple of hours, I just talk about the traffic warden hiding in the bushes or something like that. How's somebody like you affected by LTNs, by the way that the roads have evolved now? How do you earn your money now?
Well, I actually, I'm actually a criminal defence lawyer. I used to prosecute. I'm a criminal defence lawyer, and most of our roads are robotically policed. So, speeding tickets, you don't see many police officers on the road. So there are an awful lot of people committing serious road traffic offences who aren't caught by the police, but they're caught by these cameras that people have in the car, and then the police investigate them. There, unfortunately, is a massive amount of really bad driving that goes on. As far as LTNs are concerned, I'm not a fan of those. That's just moving. It's booting the can down the road. And you say evolution. It's the way the country's going in terms of crime, the detection of road traffic. Are we better drivers now? No, we're not. People have no idea what's in the highway code. I mean, isn't it ridiculous? You take a test when you're 17 or 18, and you don't have to revisit that highway code probably for the rest of your life. So people don't know that if you sit in lane 3 and lanes 1 and 2 are clear, that's what you should do, that the other lanes are overtaking lanes. There's a huge amount of ignorance there, and that the cameras aren't dealing with it. And one of the biggest problems, I know we're moving into another area.
No, we're happily move into that.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems is people who sit in the wrong lane, causing huge congestion, and just genuinely don't know. You pull up behind them, you indicate, you might give them a gentle flash, and they don't know. And if they do move over, you pass them, and then they move back. And it's just ignorance. I don't think it's anything more than ignorance. So my view is we need to take the highway code at least every 10 years. And, while we're talking about criminality on the roads, we have the highest drink drive limit of any country in the Western world.
The limit?
The limit, yeah, at 80. So at that level, the level this government and the last government say, yes, that's acceptable, you're 4 times more likely to have an accident. So the limit needs to come down. It needs to come down to what Scotland brought it down to 50.
With all due respect, and for the purposes of the fact that you may well be the criminal barrister, Mr. Loophole, and trademarked and all of that, but I'm the guy with common sense who lives in the real world. You make it whatever you want. If there aren't the people to stop you, were you to go over it, and it doesn't make any difference, does it?
Well, there aren't enough police on the road. And we need to have more police on the road, don't we? That's one of the big problems. A police officer not only detects, but he also has a huge deterrent factor. When you see a police car, it slows you down.
Indeed.
And that tends to last
you're
for a
legal,
while.
even if you're
it does.
legal,
You check, don't you? You check. There is still some respect there. Am I doing anything wrong? Just look at the number of people using phones. It's crazy. People don't care because they think, however dangerous it is, I'm not going to get caught. It's 6 points on your license, but they're prepared to take a chance. So we need far more police on the roads. While we're talking about it, in my view, we need the motorway speed limit increased in certain conditions. 70 is too slow.
Well, are you going Germany route?
Well, no, I'm not going Germany routes. I think that's absolutely crazy. But I think sort of 130 kilometres, 81 miles an hour is sensible, isn't it?
In the new cars, yes.
And then there's well, there are most new cars. The most cars now are, capable of certainly driving at 80, 90 miles an hour quite safely. 70 miles an hour was the maximum speed of the Ford Anglia in, I think, 1960, 1959. So how can we?
You have an advantage of me over age, sir.
I'm not sure it's an advantage, but it is what it is.
well, just one more. Seeing as we're doing a sweep, it's great to get hold of you because they've been trying for a minute. So I truly appreciate, sir, how busy you are and the fact that you've come on.
It's nice to be on your show.
The one thing I'm hoping, if I can get myself sorted out, my degree, which I've always wanted to do, will be to do with what's happening today in our criminal justice system. Yeah. I've been to prisons, I've opened art wings, I've done stuff. It feels to me like we're at a very, very difficult stage, not just with the number of people who are in prisons, places available, probation services, people who are committing crimes and are being let out after 40% of their service. It feels like it is really, really bad. You work in it. Tell me what you see.
It is absolutely broken. I started prosecuting in 1981, and there was a desire by the police to nail people, to put them away. That desire seems to have evaporated. I don't believe it's just a resource problem. But then when you look at what happens if they arrest, we're living, in my view, unfortunately, in what I call a decriminalized society, when, we talk about shoplifting under £200 or something you're not even going to bother investigating. Household burglaries, if no one's injured, we'll give you a crime reference number. So the whole attitude is wrong. And then you look at the people who actually end up going to prison, and there aren't the places for them. So what this new government are doing, saying, look, this is a disaster. We haven't got enough places. So we're just going to release people. And they are including violent offenders. So trust has gone, the judicial system is gone. And what does it need? It needs a clear direction, but it also needs money. It needs resources. It needs guidance from people who know what they're doing.
But it also needs rehabilitation. But that's never been. But that's never been a vote. It's never been a vote winner, is it? I'm gonna do some restorative justice. I
agree with you. I agree, because, paying criminal lawyers on legal aid, it's not a priority, is it? There's a presumption of innocence, but why do we want people who are accused? Have to bear in mind they're accused, they're presumed innocent until convicted. But it's never been it's not a vote winner. It's never high on anyone's agenda. Let's pay young lawyers who are defending people, going to prisons, police stations, out all night, doing cases all day, under massive stress, dealing in difficult circumstances. They're earning buttons. It is an absolute disgrace, and everyone thinks, they're big fat cats because they're a lawyer. Nothing could be further from the truth. So at all ends, it's broken. I've never seen it so smashed. And every day you read about these horrendous offences that are being committed by people who should already be locked up, who are out on license. I mean, there was something today in the papers about, a gentleman who's been grooming terrorism, and he's been released again. We do it every single day. We read about stuff. I'm not saying prison's the right answer for everybody. In my view, we should have sentencing is designed to be rehabilitative and punitive. It's supposed to help you and it's supposed to punish you. And prison's only suitable for a certain type of offender. And there are many offences that should be dealt with in a different way. They talk about probation, community service. But everywhere you look, it's overstretched, it's under-resourced, and they're not properly enforced. So what is the answer? There's no simple solution, is there? It needs investment. It needs someone to get hold of it and say, look, this is the budget. This is how we're going to deal with it. And, we need more prison places as well, because we have to protect society.
Well, you say more prison places. We've, doubled the prison population since Tony Blair. We have more people are calculated per capita in prison than anywhere else in Europe. There are lots of people, clearly, I'm straying into difficult areas here because I'm not supposed to have an opinion. But I do live in a real world. One last question for you. It seems...
in just dealing with prison, if I can just talk over you for a second, many people go to prison who shouldn't be there, and they meet people who teach them the tricks of the trade. They're meeting bad people who get them into bad habits. Yeah, absolutely. And the conditions are horrendous. A lot of these Victorian prisons, they're appalling conditions. There's no sort of remedial benefit from going there. It's purely punitive.
Unless it's
cruel. It's cruel, absolutely.
Unless it's Wandsworth, then it feels like you can escape or have sex or whatever it is that some of those videos look like they were showing. Last question for you: is Timpson a good? I mean, the idea that many of his shops are employing people who've committed crimes, and he has now been taken by somebody who was the former director of public prosecutions into that's a good sign, isn't it? Or is it?
Fantastic sign, because it shows that one aspect of the system is working, that the offenders can be rehabilitated. I know Timpson, and I know many of the people who work in his shops. I've never had a bad experience. It's fantastic. It's uplifting, and it shows what can be done if you deal with it in the right way. And you have, I suppose, ex-cons who have the right mentality. They want to stop what they're doing. They want to move on in life and progress. And they've had a framework in which they're able to do this. Someone has put trust in them, had faith in them, and said, listen, I'm going to give you an opportunity. Please don't blow it. And they haven't, by and large. And it is uplifting. It's a wonderful scenario.
Listen, it's been lovely speaking to you. I mean, it's utterly depressing, but at least we've got to the point.
We've talked about a few things, haven't we?
Well, that's the way it should be, and I appreciate you coming on to the show, Nick. Look after yourself.
Thanks for having me. All the best to you.
Take it easy.
Bye-bye.
BBC
Bye.
Radio London.